Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you have joined us for the Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Conference. Our next presentation of the day is from Aris Minerals. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Darren Klinck, President and Director of Aris Minerals, which trades on the OTCQB Venture Market under the symbol ARRKF and on TSXV under the symbol ARK. Welcome, Darren.
Great, thanks, Lily, and welcome everyone this morning to the Aris presentation. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. So over the next 25 or 30 minutes, I'm going to talk about Aris. We're 100% focused in Kazakhstan on large-scale copper-gold projects. This slide here, just at the beginning, gives you a bit of a smattering of the diversity of this country. It's the 9th biggest country in the world by landmass, with only 20 million people. You can see a pretty interesting shot of the capital city, Astana, very fast-growing city in Central Asia. And in the bottom left-hand corner gives you a bit of a feel for what the landscape is like where we're located in the northeastern part of Kazakhstan. In fact, that's about as rugged as it gets. We're out in the steppe where it's pretty flat grasslands and traditionally not a lot of geology is presenting. So I'll share a little bit about how we tackle that and the progress we've made here over the last couple of years. So as we move forward here into our obligatory cautionary note, I'd encourage you to pay attention to that. And it also states that we will be making forward-looking statements. And then just really to jump in with regards to our team. So I'm based in Vancouver. My business partner, Tim Berry, our CEO, is a geologist, and he's actually based in Almaty in Kazakhstan. He's been there for 3 years. Definitely a key advantage for us as a company, having the part of the senior team based in Kazakhstan. And as you can see there across the leadership group, including our technical advisors, a strong and diverse range of experiences, including a lot in that sort of copper, gold, porphyry space, which of course is quite important when you're in the exploration game, trying to find large scale copper gold deposits. Capital structure, you can see here, just over 120 million shares outstanding. It's something we've focused really diligently on and been very judicious about over the last 3 years. We've really tried to protect the capital structure up until, here recently. Obviously, the markets have got better, but for the last 2 to 3 years, it's been a challenging spot for the juniors. You'll see cash in the bank is right around 14 million Canadian. I'll talk a little bit about what that gets us in Kazakhstan, but this is one of the lowest cost jurisdictions in the world today to explore, develop, and to operate. And so that's more than enough capital to see us through all of our activities next year in 2026, and I suspect into early part of 2027. In addition, the other thing to point out here, I think, is no warrants. And so there's no warrants in the capital structure. It's pretty rare for a company in our space, but again, we've been very judicious, and so there's not a wall of warrants that need to be worked through as we continue to make discoveries and move things forward. You'll see from a shareholder perspective, we've got some great supporters. So Teck Resources, one of Canada's largest diversified mining companies, holds just under 10%, and Sprott Asset Management also holds around 10%. That's primarily out of Toronto and California. Institutional and insiders make up kind of the balance of that, initial 50%, and then about 50% would be sitting with family offices, high net worth, and retail investors. Now, when we got involved in Kazakhstan here 3 or 4 years ago, we really felt this was a jurisdiction that was going to really break open and start to see more and more investment from Western companies, largely on the back of significant reforms that President Tokayev had started to undertake in 2018, 2019, and then unfortunately, of course, COVID happened. But as we got involved, you can see groups like Rio and Fortescue had already arrived. Resource Capital Funds, a well-known private equity group out of Denver, focused in the resource space, had, along with a partner, had picked up an asset which they intended to then develop. And in fact, groups like Chevron, which many of the viewers would be aware of, have very big oil and gas footprints here. In fact, I think it is one of the largest asset bases for the company. And in fact, about 4 years ago, Chevron expanded their oil and gas operations in this country to a tune of $47 billion with a B. And so huge amounts of capital have been invested in Kazakhstan over the last 20 years. This is only accelerating now in the critical mineral space. You can see since we have arrived, Teck obviously has made an investment in Aris, and we have a strategic alliance with them on some of our earlier stage licenses. Groups like Barrick, First Quantum, BHP through their Explore program, B2 Gold, and more recently Ivanhoe Mines, Endeavour Mining, and in fact Zijin, the Chinese group, acquired that asset I mentioned earlier that Resource Capital Funds built and wrote a $1.2 billion check for that in July of this year. Alongside that, you can see the European interest. Kazakhstan, as the largest economy in Central Asia, in fact, its economy is larger than all the rest of the Central Asian economies put together, has attracted a lot of interest from Europe. It's in that middle corridor, really bridging east and west. And there's been billions of dollars invested by the EU and the EU countries over the last 2 to 3 years and pledged to improve and increase infrastructure along with access to critical minerals and energy security. I should also point out that quite surprisingly, 60% of the foreign direct investment that comes into Kazakhstan every year actually comes from Europe and North America. And so that's a fairly significant swath of capital. And when you're bordering alongside countries like Russia and China, you'd expect to see a much higher percentage of the trade from those countries. But it just goes to show the importance and the integrated nature of the economy in Kazakhstan and how it continues to grow as you look west. So we're, as I said, in Kazakhstan, it's a place where you've got a number of different belts, mineral belts that kind of collide. We're up in the northeastern part of the country. You can see on that slide, about 3 hours from the capital city on a 4-lane paved highway. But these big belts host a lot of very big deposits. Oyu Tolgoi out to the east in Mongolia, one of the larger copper gold deposits under operations today. The Boshikal mine, Aktagai, two big copper gold projects in Kazakhstan. And then you've got, mines like Almalak, Muruntau in Uzbekistan. Muruntau is the biggest gold deposit on the planet. So you're in the right part of the world. But ultimately, really a lack of modern exploration in this part of the world, largely because most of the exploration was done prior to the Soviet Union collapse in 1990. So Kazakhstan's already a big producer of many of the things that we use every day today. You can see top 10 in the world for things like uranium, chromite, titanium. In fact, pretty well all the titanium that goes into the Airbus airplanes in France comes out of Kazakhstan: zinc, copper, iron ore, coal, and of course oil. Also, it's right up there in terms of refined copper exports with smelting capacity in the country, and that is growing as well. And you can see one of the more important things for us when we first started to examine Kazakhstan and then decided to really jump in with both feet was the mining code. And so that was part of the reforms that have taken place under the leadership of President Tokayev. And to the Kazakhstan government's credit, they looked at what works around the world and copied it. About 80% of that new mining code that was established about 7 years ago is based on Western Australian mining code, so something that we're very familiar with. The other 20% would probably fall out of Canada, aspects out of Ontario and Quebec. So something we're very comfortable with. Right up where we are, these are pictures of two large-scale mines within a stone's throw. In fact, the Bogatyr coal mine that you see in the bottom right-hand corner, this is the 5th largest coal mine in the world. To put it in perspective, the pit is 13 kilometers by 6 kilometers long. It's been operating since 1954, and it still has a 100-year reserve in front of it. So these are large-scale mining operations. The Boshikal copper mine, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, again in the same belt. one of the lowest cost copper mines in the world today, producing about 100,000 tons of copper, about 100,000 ounces of gold, just off of a paved highway at 200 meters above sea level. So mining in this country is a very important part of the overall economy. It's very well respected and it's very well understood, which makes it quite easy for groups such as ourselves that are exploring and looking to develop deposits. And I think also a key reason why you've seen these major companies over the last 24, 30 months in particular show up and put boots on the ground. This here is a slide that kind of speaks to the importance around the cost structure. Around the world today, no matter where we are, we're seeing inflationary pressures across everything that we use. The mining industry, of course, has been inflicted with this as well. It costs a lot more to build things. It costs a lot more to operate things. And in many cases, those are exacerbated by logistical and geographical challenges as well, where often these deposits are in remote parts of the world or at 5,000 meters above sea level. The beauty here around Kazakhstan is that you've got some of the lowest cost structures there is around the world. You've got very low energy costs, 2.5 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour power. Means that when you're running your mills, your overall cost to run those mills are some of the lowest in the world. The cost of diesel to fill up your truck, or in this case, a mining truck, is less than 50 cents a liter. So that would be a half to a third or a quarter of what we would see it in a lot of other parts of the world today. And from our perspective, with regards to exploration work, you've got a very highly skilled workforce. You've got a lot of universities that are putting out, great geologists and mining engineers, and a drill cost that costs just over $100 a meter to drill. And if you were to comparing that to high up in the Andes in Chile, you would be, 8 or 10 times that quite easily. So your dollars go a lot further. And hence, that's definitely a competitive advantage for us logistically and also financially. Looking at the slide on the left-hand side, this is some data that the mining visual guys out of Europe put together last year. And it really takes a snapshot of what does it cost to produce a pound of copper. This is based on 2023 numbers around the world. And so looking at the big copper producers, the Techs, the Lundins, the Codelcos, the BHPs, the Rios. And interestingly, the data that fell out of this showed that some of the lowest cost copper mines in the world are in fact in Kazakhstan. Not because they're high grade mines, but again, because they've got the advantage of those logistics and the lower cost base. And the Boshakal copper mine, which you see right in the midst of our entire license package, is about 0.3% copper and 0.13 grams per ton gold. This is owned by Kaz Minerals, which was publicly traded in London up until about 3 years ago, and then went private. And it produces copper for less than $1 a pound. And so it just goes to show that the threshold to find deposits that are potentially mines in the future is not that high because of the overall cost structure advantage. And as I said, 0.3 copper plus a gold byproduct credit puts you in the lower quartile of operating copper mines around the world. So as we flash forward here with the presentation, the other thing I think to also emphasize is just the infrastructure. So I talked about getting to this part of the world 3 hours on a 4-lane paved highway, but you can see all the spaghetti lines, and that's really high voltage power. It's railway and roads that really litter this area. And again, it's because this is a mining district and a mining region of Kazakhstan. And so ultimately, all that you really need to get up and get going is already there. You're not having to bring these things into the top of mountaintops. When we look at the overall license package, you can see we've broken it into 2 different colors. And so the blue shaded areas, and I'll talk about those a little bit later in the presentation, but those are some of the earlier stage licenses that we entered into an agreement with Teck, where Teck has been funding in 2024, 2025, US $5 million of early stage exploration. The clear licenses, the ones without the shading, we control 100%. We actually control 100% of all the licenses, but in the blue shaded areas, once we get to the end of the alliance, which is coming up, Teck will have an opportunity to start earning equity in some of the projects. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but the clear licenses are 100% owned, and that's definitely where we've had a lot of our focus here over the last 18 months. And I'm going to start zooming in now on the Elemes license, which is in the middle of part of that package. And if you look at just that kind of northwestern corner of that license package, we're going to zoom into that and look at the Berezski trend. And so the Berezski trend, here's that northwest corner of the Elemes license. You can see here, this is showing geochem, and this is ultimately, again, reminding the viewers that there's not a lot of geology that presents here. It looks like the prairies of Canada, grasslands, and so there's not a lot of rocks to look at. And so you have to use both geophysics, soils, and what we call KGK drilling, which is a rotary type drill that allows you to punch through cover and get to the bedrock so that you can actually then look at the geology and the lithology and assay and figure out what's there. Luckily for us, I mean, cover here is, between 5 and call it 35 meters. So it's not a lot of cover, but it's enough to mask the geology. And it's also, really a strategy for many of the majors today, because in most parts of the world, if it sticks out of the ground at some point, someone's gone up and sampled and had a look. In this case, it's been masking it for thousands of years, and really, save for some of the Soviet work that was done in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, there's been very little exploration work that's been done in this part of the world. Now, here at Berezski, there was some historic work that was done about 18 years ago, and that was the form of some relatively shallow drilling on the Berezski target in particular. We followed that up and did a wide range of soil sampling across this area. And you can see here the copper geochem, that's copper in soils, identified about a 9-kilometer trend at Berezski, and then also a parallel structure to the east, the Amandai target. But if we just focus on the Berezski target, which is where we've been focused here over the last 11 to 12 months, I'm going to zoom in further, and you can start to see where we've been focused with drilling in particular over the last 11 months. So our initial drill program, which we were able to start announcing results on in January and February of just this year, so it's relatively new. You can see large intervals, 2, 3, 4, 500 meters of between 0.3% copper equivalent up to 1% copper equivalent, and the majority of this is all right from surface. What we know right now, 11 months in, is that we're quite confident, and we've spoken with some leading experts in the geochemistry fields, that we have at least 2 copper porphyry centers that are starting to evolve. One up in the northern part called Berezski North, and then as you move here 4 to 5 kilometers to the south, there's another one with subtle differences down in the Berezski Central area. You'll see 3 main areas that we've picked up quite good mineralization: the Berezski East, the Berezski Central, and the Berezski North. We have 2 drills that have been operating since the middle part of the year, and this program will continue then into 2026 for certain. As we zoom in a little further just into that Berezski Central area, which is that southern part of the geochem area, you can see here, this is about these blocks here. You can see this area here where you see the drilling that's completed and planned at Berezski Central is about 600 by 500 meters. Again, very early days, but starting from surface, and you're seeing pretty nice intervals starting from surface in those sort of ranges that would lead us to believe that we're finding the sort of things, if we can continue to build scale here, that would be consistent with what's mineable in this part of the world. As I mentioned, just down the road, about 40 kilometers from here, the Boshikal mine at 0.3% copper and 0.13 gold, one of the lowest cost mines in the world, open pit from surface, 30-year mine life, and is printing cash. And so for us, this looks at the mag. Key focus for us, where we've had one of the 2 drills going here over the last 3 months, is at Berezski Central. We've stepped out over to the Berezski East area. There was some historic drilling that was done there. We did a hole we announced early this year. We did a follow-up hole 19 that was announced about 8 weeks ago, and definitely picked up some very interesting potassic and flexibornite as well. And so what we're really still trying to figure out is the size and scale of this area. And it remains to be seen. I think it's fair to say that we're still, every drill hole's educating us on what we're seeing. We are getting surprised to the upside. And further to that, in between the Berezski Central and the Berezski East area, while we see very limited, and in fact, there's a big open patch in this area where there's no copper in soils, we've run a KGK program to get through that cover, and those assays are off in the lab right now, just to see what sort of connectivity exists between these two areas, and if we can draw any sort of comparisons between Berezski Central, Berezski East, and what's in the middle. Furthermore, we've done a lot of geophysics across this area. As I said, it's one of the tools that we can use given we've got cover. This is some preliminary gravity data from a program that we've done here late this year. We're also waiting on MT, which we did across quite a large area here at Berezski and Amandai. And that data we expect to get here later this month. But you can see gravity low, big gravity low where the Berezski Central area is, that seems to be demonstrating fairly consistent mineralization in this trend. There's a gravity low we weren't aware of, to the northeast of Berezski, so at Berezski East, perhaps that's telling us something. And then also down here to the south in an area we call Novi, again, outside of the geochem. But definitely interesting that, perhaps gravity is another tool for us to continue to vector in on as we're moving forward with our exploration initiative here into 2026. So that Elemes area is practically brand new. This is 11 months. Really, we've been working on this in the scheme of things of discovering and developing deposits. That's almost overnight, I guess I would say. But because we have the advantage of the cost structure, we've got advantage obviously from a geographical location where we're not, kind of challenged with logistics. It's definitely something we can continue to move forward with, and I would expect that you would see us continue to ramp up our exploration methodically as we continue to learn more about these areas. And again, reminding the audience that we're still talking about quite large areas, across that Berezski area, and itself is almost 9 kilometers from top to bottom. So if we spend just a few minutes about the Teck Eris Alliance, as I mentioned earlier, Teck committed to funding up to $5 million US of exploration in 2024 and 2025 across a smattering of our licenses that were earlier stage. And in most cases here, really there's been very limited work that had been done prior to post 1990. Most of the work here would have been done by Soviets, and it's soil work. Maybe there's the odd drill hole, some geophysics, etc. So really, these were early stage targets that we worked with Teck on. We operated, Teck funded, and seconded some of their team members into the team. And over the last, call it 23 months, we've really focused initially on geophysics, soils, and then identified targets which Teck prioritized, again, focusing really just on large copper. So any of the precious metals targets that we worked up over the last 18 to 20 months were not tested. That wasn't a priority for Teck. And the deal really was that Teck had the opportunity after funding up to that $5 million, which we're just approaching the back end of here now. At that point, then they have the opportunity to select up to 4 projects. These projects would be up to 120 square kilometers each. So to put that into perspective, the Mesor license is about 450. And then they can start to earn equity by spending up to $47.5 million per project to earn up to 75%. So assays are pending. I expect early part of next year we'll get some clarity from Teck as to what their plans are here. These are big areas. That blue shaded area you can see is 1,900 square kilometers. And so, we've completed about a 5,000 meter drill program, 1, 2, 3 holes per target, over 6 targets, maximum depth for the most part, 400 meters. And so really just scratching the surface. And regardless, I think there'll be more to follow up on whether or not that's Teck through their choosing, or if we choose to take some of the higher priority targets and follow up ourselves. But it's been a good way for us to maximize our dollars, do some of that risky early stage exploration up front with other people's money, and preserve the share structure, which of course has been a high priority for us. So as we round it out here and make sure we leave enough time for questions, you'll see here, I think that we got into the country early. We worked quite quickly to assemble a large land package, relied on Soviet data. and then methodically move forward with the exploration to the point where now we're testing multiple large-scale copper targets across our license package, as well as those with the Teck Alliance. And as we go forward, we'll see our exploration program continue to ramp up as we're learning more. Elemes obviously is a new area that's proving to be perfect timing given the commodity space that we're in, and there's just really a paucity of copper developers with large scale potential in environmsts that like Kazakhstan with low costs. So I'm going to pause there. I'll leave us here with a photo of what the capital city of Astana looks like. It's probably not what many would envision, and go to questions. Again, if you've got questions, feel free to feed them through the online portal. So a question here, can you share your end game for Aris? Is it to be acquired, project developer, or long-term Kazakhstan platform company? Yeah, good question. I think, in many cases over my career anyways, over the last 20, 25 years, there's things that you can control and things that you can't control. I think initially for us, definitely, we see our sweet spot is getting in early, methodically moving exploration forward and trying to make new discoveries. Our sweet spot, I think, definitely would be to, on that end of the spectrum. I think, what we've obviously seen is we've seen more and more majors that have come in. We actually have, confidentiality agreements, I think, with probably about 70% of the world's largest copper miners. On top of that, some of the world's biggest gold miners as well, and they're showing up here in Kazakhstan for the reasons we've seen before. So, our overall objective, I think, is to get in quickly, pick up licenses, do the work that's necessary to figure out if they're prospective, move them along, and then rinse and repeat. And ultimately, I think there's probably many groups that would be very interested in developing copper gold deposits in this part of the world, given the cost structure, and we'd be happy to chat with them once we get to that sort of critical mass. So the de-risking, another question here, what are the de-risking milestones for Elemes over the next 12 to 18 months? Yeah, good question. And I think, for us, again, we're 11 months into this. It always seems like it's, it takes longer and costs more. I think the good thing for us in Kazakhstan is the cost structure, and so we can really try to protect that share capital structure. And we've really had great support from shareholders over the last 2 to 3 years along the way. For us, I think it's really now we're stepping into an area where we know for some time now we're going to have multiple targets, new targets that we're going to work up and need to be tested. And a good chunk of these, may or may not work out. I mean, that's exploration. But we are starting to gain critical mass. I think for us at Elemes, particularly that Berezski trend now, Berezski North, Berezski Central, understanding what's happening out in Berezski East in relation to Berezski Central, and start to build critical mass here where we can start to string together a deposit or deposits near surface likely that look like they're potential deposits that could be mined. And so that's really us. It's geological risk, I think, for the main thing. We've had such great support from the government, and I think the steady stream of groups that continue to come is really a testament to that. So really, it's geological risk and figuring out what's there in the ground. Question here: while Kazakhstan is presented as mining friendly, what are on the ground risks regards to community relations, bureaucracy, and the legacy of the Soviet era operations? Probably just real quickly on this, of all the places in the world that I've worked and traveled to, and I've spent most of my career in Latin America, the US, Australasia, Southeast Asia, this has probably been the easiest place to operate. It's very straightforward, and yes, there is some bureaucracy as there is everywhere, but I would argue that it's not as bureaucratic as even we have here in North America. And from a community relations perspective, from a government perspective, from a social perspective, mining is at the core part of this country. And so it's well respected. We've had really very little major challenges at all. And I think, because you've got a big country, 9th largest in the world, a small population, there's a lot more space here than in many places that we've operated as well. So it's been a tremendous environment. It's only surprised us to the upside, and we're really excited about the future. So a few catalysts for investors over the next 12 to 24 months, what constitutes success is the last question. I'll finish this real quickly. So definitely, I think going back to the second question for us. We're going to continue to test new targets. There's no doubt. But for us, I think as we move forward over the next 6 to 12 months, being able to demonstrate that we're building critical mass and scale in 1 or 2 or 3 of these areas, I think is what's really the key stage gate for us. We know we're going to go on for some time trying to find new deposits, but definitely for us, as we can build critical mass and scale in 1 or 2 of these areas, I think it's going to demonstrate that we're on our way to something that hopefully will be a mine one day. I'll close it off there. Thank you very much. If you've got follow-up questions, we of course always would love to hear from you. info@arisminerals.com. And we thank everybody for your attention and joining us today.